Hello, welcome to Yoga with Rachel. Rach, thank you very much for joining me. Welcome to our last practice for our Libra season focus. Libra rules over the lower back, and this is a particular practice that a few of my ladies who tend to come along to the beginners class on a Monday have been requesting for a while, and I wanted to wait for this one to come out when we were moving into Libra season. So this one's really focusing on yoga, being very gentle for the back. Listen to your body. There are lots of different variations. If you have got the props, do pause the video so you can go and find them if you haven't got them. You'll need a belt and a brick block. The belt doesn't have to be a yoga specific belt. It can be a belt that you'd normally use on trousers. You could use a tie, you could use a resistance band, you could use a belt off your dressing gown, which will be fine. And then the brick block, you might have like a hardback book that you could wrap a pillow, or sorry, not a pillow around, a blanket around, or you could use a very firm pillow instead. So we're just going to use the brick block to give yourself a little extra height when we go into a supported pose. All these poses we're going to practice are going to be on the back, so you might decide to grab a blanket as well to have that underneath your back for a bit of extra support, or just place on your mat, or even have over the top of you whilst you're practicing these poses so that you can be as comfortable as possible. So we're going to find a way onto our back. So have your props handy. I'm just going to put them to the other side so they don't restrict the view for you to see what we're doing. So find your way onto your back. Knees are bent, feet are on the mat. Tuck the chin into the chest. So you're lying on the back of your head, not the crown. Gently finding that length into your neck. And you might need to just tuck the tailbone under. So just have a little bit of movement here of finding your neutral spine and then just finding a little bit more of a tuck of the tailbone. So neutral spine, the spine is not supposed to be straight, but we tend to be either in a point of pushing the tailbone out. One of my teachers would call this the booty popper, or we'd be tucking the tailbone constantly, and then as you can see, my tailbone and the glutes start to lift and you're thrusting the hips forward. So we want to find that point where it feels very, very neutral, and it might feel uncomfortable whilst you're there if you don't tend to stay in what we call that neutral spine. If you tend to be here or you tend to be here, that might be where it feels comfortable. So how we feel it goes with tilting the pelvis, so our pelvic tilts. So you're pushing the tailbone into the mat and the lower back starts to arch, then you're tucking the tailbone but keeping the glutes on the mat, so your lower back starts to push into the mat. But just find that point where it feels like you're in between the two. And this might take a few practices, so don't worry if you don't get this right now. And then just have a little tiny tuck in the tailbone. So you're starting to push your lower back very gently into the mat. So this just helps to protect your lower back a bit. We're going to move into half a happy baby pose. So we're going to be working on one leg and then we'll release and we'll work on the other leg. And that's what we're going to be doing for the first 3 of the 4 poses that we're going to be practicing today. So half happy baby, doesn't matter which side you start with. I'm going to start with my right leg. So I'm going to bring my right foot up off the mat, keeping the right knee bent. And the very, very first variation of this is just to hold on with one or sometimes both hands behind the knee or onto the back of the thigh, and bringing that knee towards the same side arm, pit or shoulder. So you're not trying to bring the knee into the belly or the chest, you're just gently pulling the knee out to the side, and you're trying to draw the knee towards the front or inside of the shoulder or to the armpit at the same side that you're working with. So you can stay here, you can keep that foot really in the calf muscle, the shin relaxed, so you can keep that real bend in the knee and the foot's not doing anything, you're holding onto the back of the leg. Or you might have a go with flexing the foot and pushing the foot up towards the ceiling whilst keeping this bend in the knee. Now you might be able to hold this, but you'll still be holding onto the back of the thigh or the knee, or it might be comfortable to reach up and hold the outside edge of your foot. So you're trying to keep the knee to the inside of your arm. So rather than crossing the elbow to the inside of the knee, try to keep the elbow crease and the outer side of the knee together. If that creates more tension, especially in the neck and the shoulders, if you're having to lift your head up off the mat to just reach your foot, please, 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 please stay here, so holding onto the back of the knee, and that will be enough. The other leg, you can stretch that out if that feels comfortable. You might keep the knee bent with the foot on the mat. See what feels comfortable for you. Really be aware of your back, but if you are starting to lift up towards that foot, Then see how you feel in the neck and the shoulders. Your knee might not be anywhere near as close as my knee is to the armpit. Your knee might be in your armpit, which is fine. So find what feels comfortable for you. A few more breaths, and then we're going to change sides. So if you're holding onto the foot, gently releasing and place that foot all the way down onto the mat, changing sides. So stay with the first variation. So just because you could go to the full variation on the other side, doesn't mean we have to rush when we change sides. So you're lifting the foot, bringing the knee in and across towards the arm and the armpit. And you're holding onto the back of the thigh. You can really keep that knee bent, squeezing into the back of the thigh. From here you might have to go flexing the foot. So it looks as though you're trying to then push the foot up towards the ceiling. And you can keep the hand onto the back of the knee, that's fine if it feels comfortable. Reaching up and holding on, arm to the outer side of the leg. And if there's creating any tension in the neck or the shoulders, then stay here, that's perfectly fine. Doesn't matter how close your knee is to your armpit. This other leg, you might keep the knee bent, you might have the leg stretched out. So see what feels comfortable for you. And just a few more breaths here before we release and go to our next pose. So taking your time, gently releasing, knees are bent, feet on the mat, and you're going to find your belt. And don't do this over the top of you, especially if you have got the yoga belt with the D class. Just be very mindful as you release the belt, and you're going to roughly fold the belt in half. Now that halfway point is what you're going to use for the belt to hold onto the foot. So we're going to go into our reclined big toe pose. So you're going to bend the knee again, bringing the knee in towards the belly of the chest, and you're going to lift the foot up so you can take the belt around the arch of the foot. Keep the foot flexed as you push the leg away. Foot is flexed and the toes are pointing towards the crown of the head rather than up towards the ceiling. Get your leg as straight as you can, which might mean you have your leg here rather than closer in towards the belly of the chest. You've now got two sides of the belt straightening down either side of the foot, holding on to the belt. Let your arms be as relaxed as possible. So as you can see, my upper arms and elbows can find the mat, my hands can rest onto the belly. This might be where you stay, or if it's comfortable, start to nudge the leg a little bit closer to you, keeping the movement from the hip. If you're feeling this in the hamstrings and the back of the thigh, make sure it feels comfortable. So if you push your leg away to the point where you can't feel a stretch in the hamstring, and then start to lift your leg up and closer to you, find that point where you start to get that stretch in the hamstring, and you might just stay there or go a little bit beyond that if it feels comfortable. Every now and then just give the fingers a wiggle so you're not clenching and straining into the hands. And you might, if it's comfortable, wrap the belt around the hands instead of thinking about pulling too much onto the belt with the hands. So see what feels comfortable for you. It's not about getting that leg as close as you can, it's just gently finding that stretch into the hamstrings to find a little bit of release for your lower back. And then your other leg, you can be bent foot on the mat, you might stretch that leg out, really up to you. A few more breaths there before we change sides. You're ready, gently bringing the knee into the belly, releasing the belt, place that foot down onto the mat. As we change sides, bring the knee into the belly, start to lift the foot up so we can place that belt around the ball of the foot, the arch of the foot, and then extend the leg away. Keep the foot flexed, so it looks as though you're trying to push your foot up to the ceiling. Get your leg as straight as you can, so you're not bending into the knee, and you're pushing the leg as far away from you, so you don't feel that hamstring stretch to start with. As you draw the leg closer to you, moving from the hip, find that point where you just start to get that connection into the hamstrings. You might wrap the belt a couple of times around the hands, rather than pulling and straining. One side may feel very, very different than the other, which again is completely fine. And focusing on the breath. This leg that you've already stretched, up to you, find what feels comfortable. You might prefer to keep the knee bent, foot on the mat. You might prefer to stretch the leg out. It really doesn't matter as long as you are comfortable. It's not about pulling and straining here. It's about finding a gentle release of the back. And you might decide, after practicing these for a while with me, that you decide to stay here for a little bit longer. So you're more than welcome to pause the video when you're ready to release the pose. And then come back into the practice so you get the reminders of what we're doing. But for now, just a few more breaths. When you're ready, gently releasing, placing the belt to one side, so we don't need the belt anymore. We're going to have a go with reclined pigeon pose or figure four pose. And again, there's lots of different variations. See what feels comfortable for you. So coming back to your first leg, we're going to lift the foot off the mat, bring the knee into the belly. First option, we can place the hands onto the knee or the shin. And again, the leg we're not working with right now, we can stretch the leg away if that's where you feel comfortable. Or you can keep the knee bent, foot on the mat. So this might be the variation you stay in, which is perfectly fine. If this is where you're comfortable, there's no need to move. If you want to check in a little bit more with going into the hips, then you can rebend to the knee of the leg we're not working with, so the foot's on the mat and the knee is bent. And release the front of the knee and the shin, and take that foot over to the other side. So the foot and the ankle hover off the side of the thigh, foot is flexed, and gently drop the knee to the side. So it looks as though you're trying to cross the legs. If that hip is really tight and you want to help it, you can very gently place your hand onto the thigh or the inside of the knee. There's really no need for that. The hands can just rest onto the belly or down by your side. It's more important to keep the foot flexed, so just keeping that awareness of supporting the knee and with the ankle. And you're welcome to stay here. There's no need to move beyond this space, especially if you've got a lot of tension in your back. If you do want to have a go, you can lift the foot that's still on the mat off the mat, so you bring the knee in towards the belly whilst keeping this knee pushing away, but the hands can stay relaxed. If you want to go for the full variation, please only go there if it's comfortable. So if you can thread one arm through the legs, the other arm around the outside, holding onto the back of the thigh. But notice if that creates any tension in the neck or the shoulders, or if it means that you have to lift your head up, then please bring your head back down and bring the hands back onto the belly. So stay with the variation that feels the most comfortable for you. A few more breaths before we change sides. We're not here for very long. And like I said in the previous pose, if you want to stay here longer, feel free to pause the video, moving out to the pose when you feel ready to. So that foot that we've lifted off the mat, if you have already, bring that foot down, gently bringing that knee back into the belly, so we can bring the hands onto the front of the knee, the shin. And this variation, that very first variation, really nice for getting into the lumbar spine, the lower back. Place that foot down onto the mat, knee is still bent, or you might have a little stretch of that leg out as we change sides. Stay with variation one, so bring the other knee into the belly, placing the hands onto the front of the knee, the shin. This leg that you've already stretched, the knee can stay bent, foot on the mat, you might stretch the leg away. See what feels comfortable for you. And remember, you can stay here, or you might try the next option. So if the other leg was stretched out, bend the knee and place the foot onto the mat. Release the knee and the shin and cross the legs. So this foot stays flexed, toes pointing up, the foot and the ankle hover off the side of the thigh, and you're letting the knee drop out to the side. Hands rest on the belly, or you might just give that leg a little nudge, just going a little bit more into the hip, hand onto the inside of the thigh or onto the knee. We're really not a necessity. We just find where it feels comfortable. we can stay here. We might see if that foot that's still on the mat, if it feels comfortable to lift that foot up, staying here, hands can rest on the belly. Or the last variation, thread one arm through and the other arm around. But if it means to do that, you have to lift your head up. Please stay in this option or one of the other ones. If it's comfortable to find that bind or threading of the arms around the thigh and your head stays on the mat, then feel free to stay here. But we don't want to create any extra tension in the neck or the shoulders. Remember, we're trying to keep the spine fairly neutral. And if you're lifting your head up, you're taking yourself out of that neutral spine. So we can stay here. You might release the hands onto the belly. Just a couple more breaths. And the foot that's lifted off the mat, we could place that foot down just so we move into that second variation. From there, we can bring the knee back into the belly, hands just rest for a breath or two on the front of the knee or the shin. And gently releasing. So our last pose in this practice, so keeping it quite short and sweet, is where we use the block. So you might have a hardback book with a blanket wrapped around just to give it a bit of extra cushioning. You might have quite a firm pillow or cushion to use. You don't have to have one of these foam bricks. But we're going to literally leave it on this setting. So we're not on the highest setting, we're using the widest part to support your hips and your lower back. So both knees are bent, knees and feet are hip width apart. Gently lift your hips, your tailbone into a bridge pose and bring the block underneath the hips and the tailbone. So you're finding that triangle point of the hips and the tailbone. And you're gently bringing your hip bone down onto your block. Keeping a slight tuck of the chin into the chest. Hands will rest on the hips, the belly will fall softly away from the side. So you're going into your supported bridge pose. Just a really lovely way because you're elevating the hips to release and relieve the lower back. You don't need to go any higher than this. This is absolutely lovely and really supportive for the SI joint as well. And just focusing on the breath. And you're more than welcome to stay here for longer if this feels comfortable. And you might then move into Savasana whenever you're ready, releasing the block to one side. You might decide to go into a little bit more of a practice for the lower back, so I will pop some videos on the end here and here. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. It just shows your support for free yoga on YouTube. And thank you for joining me. I shall see you next week for our brand new sequence as we move to